PodSaaS, where we're putting the SaaS back in sassy. Sponsored by LeadrPro, where you can book demos with target customers on demand and fill your sales pipeline instantly.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of PodSaaS. I'm your host, Chris Shang, and today we have Alyssa Marshall coming to us from Owwlish. How's it going, Alyssa?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing, Chris? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming on. Where are you based out of?
A little mountain town in Arizona called Payson.
Oh, interesting. Okay. What's the biggest city that's closest to?
The biggest city would be Phoenix. So we are about like an hour and a half northeast of Phoenix, and it looks nothing like Phoenix at all. Like it's full of pine trees. It's 20 degrees cooler. It's wonderful.
Interesting. Okay, very cool. Curious as to how you ended up there. But before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about Owwlish, what it is, and who makes a good customer for you guys?
For sure. Owwlish is a platform that helps non-technical course creators put awesome looking online courses on their websites without having to hire a developer. So the people that make a good customer for us are those people that, especially those people that use web platforms that don't really have another way of putting an online course onto their site, onto their website. So let's say if you use like a WordPress or even a Shopify now has other like companies or plugins that do help you put online courses onto your own website, right? But like if you use other platforms like a Duda or a Webflow or a Weebly, there are no plugins or there was really not a way to put up a course on your own site without having to, let's say, get a subdomain and use a different company and manage a whole different website. And so, that's what we do. And so those are the people that really, really seek us out. People that just don't have another way of putting a course on their website. Like if they're a Webflow user, for instance, that's a really big part of our customer base.
Interesting. Okay. And are they more individuals, like thought leaders, or is it like companies that are trying to create a thought leadership section perhaps on their page and creating a course, that's maybe in relation to the company's product or service?
Right now we have both, but I'd say the percentage that we have more of are individuals.
Okay, got it. Cool. Love to talk to a little bit more about the history of Owwlish, but before we do, we have a series of rapid fire questions that we like to get through just to get to know you, Alyssa, a little bit more better on a personal level. So if you're up for it, we can jump right in.
Let's do it.
All right, first question, super easy, is favorite entrepreneur and or startup story. It could be one of the same or different.
Sarah Blakely. So she's the founder of Spanx. And so I've never been in physical product business. Well, that's actually not completely true. I have for like a short stretch of time. But I just love her energy that she brings to just life in general. I don't know her personally, but what seems to be her energy and her story. I mean, she was like this door-to-door fax machine salesman person. And from there, she figures out this thing, cuts off, the feet off of pantyhoses. And then she's bold enough to go into these, department stores and gets meetings. And when she is rejected, she has this person follow her to the bathroom, put it on, and just be like, look, see, like, this is amazing. And that's how she gets her first deal, I think. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that story I just find super inspiring. I love it.
Yeah. And, she definitely has an interesting story, and I'm familiar with her through her husband Jesse Itzler, who's like also has an interesting story as an entrepreneur. But yeah, that's a really good one. But next question: do you remember what you wanted to be as a kid? 8, 9, 10 years old.
So I have to say that I didn't really think hard about what I wanted to be as an adult when I was a kid, but I did have one answer that I consistently wrote, in school. I don't know if it was like this in the US too, but in Korea where I grew up, like always there was a section you had to write what you wanted to be or your future goals. Like this was like in the beginning of every new school year, you would write it out along with all your family information. And I would always write that I wanted to be a diplomat. Now I have absolutely no political ties in my family or anywhere else whatsoever. The only way I arrived at that conclusion was because I spoke good English, because I had spent some years as a child, in the US. And then I went back to Korea when I was about 10. And before that age, I never gave it an ounce of thought. But starting that age forward, it was more like, well, what do I do well? The only thing I could think of is I speak good English, which was very, very rare in Korea back in that time. And it was just like, okay, well, what could I do with the good English that I speak? It just seemed very logical. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I heard of a thing called a diplomat. Let me do that.
Very funny.
That was the only thing. Yeah, the only reason.
Super interesting.
But that's what I said.
It's probably one of the more unique answers we've gotten so far, but that's a good one. Next question is, it's a little bit more personal, but most painful experience, and this can be personal or professional, and I'll give it some context. I think our most exponential times of growth, again, personally or professionally, tends to stem from places of extreme discomfort. So obviously looking back, it may not be something that, was super thrilling to kind of go through during that time, but maybe character defining today. Is there anything that you care to share? Again, it could be personal, professional, that you feel like has been molded you into the entrepreneur you are today?
Sure. So this was when I was pregnant with my first. So about 5 years ago. The business that I will be talking about is not Owwlish. This was before the conception of Owwlish even. But that business is actually still going. I have a business where I teach dentists from all over the world. So I am a dentist for context, and I have several courses that teach dentists some techniques. Let's just keep it simple and put it that way. And at the time, that was our only business. That was like the business that was feeding us for years. And a faculty from my dental school kind of ripped off my business and kind of copied it and started bringing in his own students. And the demographic that I serve is not just all dentists. It's like very specific. It's dentists that are getting ready to start a specific program in the US. So it's a small market size, but it was big enough for me. But when my professor entered it, and he is really good at what he does, he taught me all the things that I know. The revenue just started dipping like it was nobody's business. And I was pregnant, and that was bad. That was like, I think, the most stress that I had ever been in. And my husband did really try to shelter me from the financial information, but I mean, he can only shelter me so much, right? Because I see the numbers not coming in. So that was bad. And after that, I'll say that I'm a little bit more cautious not to hedge my bets completely in that, let's say, one little small market. Like I had that one income stream. And if that went down, I mean, I could probably start working as a dentist again, but like, that's not what I wanted to do. So it's not like I was in real danger, but it sure felt like it, like expecting a baby anytime kind of thing. That wasn't good.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Yeah, we'd love to come back to that. But all right, so going from that experience and then now with Owwlish, obviously it's still as an entrepreneur building your own business. And I don't think enough like service-based professionals necessarily get the kudos for what they do, because a lot of professionals in the medical field, for example, are forced to kind of become entrepreneurs or understand a side of business that they weren't necessarily like trained in, right? So you have to be a good marketer, you have to be a good salesperson, you have to, be able to know how to generate traffic to a certain degree, and all these different things. But that being said, I'm sure you've worn a lot of hats and have gone through like the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs. What's motivating you personally in like the 25th hour? Again, like maybe referencing that other business and kind of being put in that position. So what's kind of pushing you forward as opposed to just being like, you know what, I'm just going to go back to being a dentist and just suck it up. Yeah.
The ability to have a say in what I do with my time and my attention. I mean, I have not worked as a dentist in like a decade, so that's been a it's been a while. It is certainly something I could always return to, if shit hits the fan and like I really need to figure something out. So I am lucky in that I have that fallback, right? Like if all hell breaks loose, the worst case scenario, I'm a dentist and that's okay. Like I have it pretty good in that way. However, do I want to do that? No, not at all. It's really hard on your body, like I don't know. It's so common that people will just look at you and say like they're nervous, their face is nervous and they're very open about it. Yeah, I don't really want to come see you today. It's like, I know, I hear that all the time. You know what I mean? So it's being in the other side of that table, like I'm human too. I don't necessarily want to be there. You don't want to be there. I don't really want to be there either. I don't think most dentists have the opportunity to really say it. I get to because I don't practice anymore, but yeah, what was your question again? I feel like I have deviated. Oh,
No.
going.
Yeah, what keeps you going? And that makes sense, right? Having autonomy and control over your schedule, right? And ownership over your life and your income stream and how big it grows or not or whatever it might be, and having that autonomy, I think is really big.
Completely. And now I have two daughters, 2 and 5, and like I want to show them that like I'm always working towards something. Yeah, being a mom is like the hardest thing ever. Like seriously, much harder than like doing business. But at the same time, like I don't want to show them that I am just a mom, like basically that I exist just for them. Like I want to be that role model that shows them like, no, I am your mother and I have this other thing outside of you. Like I have a life outside of you. I have ambitions outside of you that are mine. And I hope that they would get something like that as they grow as well.
Fair enough. Love that. Next question is, obviously it can still be stressful being a mom and as well as, being a business owner. Is there anything particular you go to personally to decompress?
3 things, workout, saunas, and I live in Payson, which is like have all these hiking and amazing nature. So nature, it's not always by myself, especially the nature one, but yes, decompress, so important.
Yep. Awesome. We alluded to this before, but again, as an entrepreneur, you're wearing a lot of different hats. Has there been a skill set that you've picked up along the way that you've had a strong emotional disposition towards, either loved or hated, that you didn't think that you would pick up?
I don't know if this counts as a skill set. I guess it does. Delegation. Delegation. Like so much delegation. I would not be able to do anything if I didn't delegate out, I think. So yeah, like hiring good people, like smart people that are capable of doing what you need them to do and then trusting them has been has allowed me to do a lot more than I would have been able to do if I were like, doing all the little things by myself.
Yep. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Next question is, do you have a bucket list, number 1? And then 2, what's one of the more ambitious items on the bucket list?
A bucket list in terms of like things that I want to do or places that I want to go to?
Yeah, anything. I mean, it could be writing a song or climbing a mountain or learning how to skydive or anything.
Okay, if you go there, I want to at least become a brown belt of jiu-jitsu. I just got out of my white belt status, so I'm very early, but it is so much fun. I love it, and yeah, that's one thing that I want to continue developing in terms of that. And then what was your second question?
No, that's pretty much it. So just if you have a bucket list and then what the ambitious items on that. Becoming a brown belt in jiu-jitsu is a good one.
Yeah, I feel like, maybe I should say black belt, but but brown belt would make me very happy.
Fair enough. The last question here is the idea of legacy, but more importantly, what kind of impact do you want to leave on this world before you leave it?
For the entrepreneurs that we serve as a company, if we help their business in any little way, shape, or form, I think that's a really big win. for people that, let's say, because that was me, like the non-technical founder that needed to get an online course up and nothing was working. It was way too complicated. And I think it's almost, for a lot of people, it's hard enough that they stop before, like before actually achieving it. So we try to make that easier. So if I could do that, that's a huge win. And for on a more personal level, it would be my kids. Even though, you know, I say like, oh yes, I have ambitions outside. If I really dial down to what is the most important thing in my life, it's certainly family and certainly my kids. So I want to be remembered as a mom that loved living life, that was full of life, and just had a good time in whether we were going on a hike or whether I was going out to work, that I enjoyed what I was doing.
That's very good. Awesome. So that's it for the series of rapid fire questions. But super interesting background, and I want to dive more into that because you don't hear a lot of times dentists coming out and starting a tech company, right? So I think like one, you know, how did you make that decision? And I read a little bit about, you know, it did stem from this idea of generating, you know, courses on your own first. But beyond that, you know, what was the underlying motivator? Let's kind of start there. Like, how did you end up in dentistry, and then ultimately, how did you make the decision to leave it? To not necessarily leave it entirely, but like pivot, I guess, you know, from the actual physical part of it.
Right, from practicing of dentistry, absolutely. The very simple and shallow reason I decided to go to dentistry was because I could. I was in Korea, and in Korea, so here in the US, dental school is a postgrad school. You do undergrad first and then you go. In Korea, in most other parts of the world, actually, it is not. You go straight out of high school. It's instead, though, it is 6 years long. It's longer than the duration here. But anyway, and the only thing, so it's kind of a bad, it's a part of the culture that I don't like about Korea, let's just put it that way, is that academics are so important. It's like academics is what your life revolves around as starting at least middle school, if not high school. That's really all there is. And it's kind of like your goal is to get to a good university. That is your goal, right? But your goal really should be to be whatever, like you're going to do in adulthood. I think that should be your goal. It's not like about getting that acceptance, right? But that's your goal when you're at least in that culture. And so I got a score that I could go to dental school. And that was the only reason I went. Honestly, I applied to, like, I could apply to 3 schools. At that time I applied, like that was my quota. I couldn't apply to more. I applied to 1 medical school, 1 dental school, and 1 Chinese medicine school. And I got accepted just to the dental school. So I was just like, okay, choice made easy. That's where I'm going. So that's how I went there. And after I graduated, so while I was in school, my mom and my brother moved, and my sister too, moved to the US. So I was like a senior there, and they were moving to the US. And it was kind of like, well, if I were to stay, I would just, you know, be a dentist here. Or if I were to follow them, because I did not want to be by myself on the other side of the world, I would have to figure out how to get my license again in the US, which is not a very simple process, but I chose the latter. And so I moved here. I had to pass a bunch of tests. I had to like take some skills assessment tests and apply to school. I had to go through that process twice. And ultimately, I went to UCLA. And while I was in my senior year of UCLA, the book, the 4-Hour Workweek book, was kind of given to me randomly. I was not even a reader at that point. Somebody told me to listen to the audiobook of it. And I was like, I guess there's a thing called audiobooks. I guess there are books that are not novels. That was how, like, the only 2 types of books in my life were like academic books or novels. Not that I even really read a lot of novels either, but I was just like, oh, okay, well, this is new. I'll listen. And I would be like in my lab, dental lab, you know, doing like patient work, trying to finish up my quota so I can graduate on time. And I'm like listening to this book, and I'm like, whoa, my life as I knew it is now collapsed. My life view, the view of what life was or how I was supposed to live has completely shattered and changed. And I was just like, there is a thing, like I can do this. Like, I guess there is a possibility of me actually not being a dentist, because I never was passionate about dentistry. If I I never was like, oh my God, I can't, wait to do more treatments today. That was never really me. I was good at what I was doing, but it was just like, oh, okay, this is my career path. Let me get better at it because this is what I do, right? But there's a huge difference between like, I want to do this versus like, this is what I do. So I was certainly, this is what I do. But yeah, when I came in contact with that book, it was like my life had totally turned around, and now I was thinking about like, what can I do? And ultimately, the thing that allowed me to leave the practice of dentistry was still dentistry, but it was helping of other dentists that were coming in from other countries, just like I did a few years ago, getting into programs, helping them in that process. That was a ticket for me.
Got it. And how did you come across that idea? Was it more of just like looking at what do I know that I could do? That's I guess a segue from dentistry, right? But it is more of like education as opposed to, I think, like true dentistry, right? So was it more of just kind of looking at the skill set that you had and trying to figure out something that you could do that's outside of the practicing part, or how did that come across?
So I was already helping people while I was in school.
Okay.
Unknowingly, I kind of started the process, I guess, but that was very organic. So back to my story, it took me 2 application cycles to get in. The first cycle I applied and it was a total disaster. I didn't get in anywhere. The second cycle I applied, I did a lot of research. I changed everything and I got accepted at like 9 schools. And so that was a lot. And so when that had happened, I had friends that I was studying with that I started helping. And then it was kind of like, oh, well, somebody else needs help. Can you help her? Well, can you help her? And it was kind of like this word of mouth kind of thing. Like, oh, this person that's in school right now, she got accepted to lots of schools. And if you email her, she tends to get back to you and just kind of throw you some nuggets here and there. So I had started that. I was not thinking of that as a business, by the way, like at all, in any capacity. It was just like, oh yeah, these people need help. I needed help. I know how clueless you are. Let me kind of guide you a little bit. But what solidified that more as a business was, so I was practicing as a dentist. So I had graduated already. I was practicing. And a friend came to visit. It's funny enough, it's the same friend that gave me the 4-Hour Workweek book. But a friend came to visit, and he was, what was that called? I don't think they're in business anymore, but there was a software that like marketers used a lot that was called Market Samurai or something like that. Okay. And it was like a keyword research kind of tool. And along with their tool, they had this 30-day challenge. And anyway, he comes to visit. We're in hot Austin, Texas, by the pool in our apartment complex with my husband. The 3 of us are like poring over this. And I'm just like curious, right? So I'm like plugging in keywords into the software tool. And I start with just random stuff like juice detox and making smoothies and stuff like that. And nothing is showing up very favorably. And then I start typing in keywords about this international dentist group and it's clicking. I was like, wait, oh my God, like I already have a few people, like I'm doing this and this is saying that this can be a business. So that's when I actually like made a legit website and started to collect emails. The whole like legitimizing everything started after that point. But the dream of being able to leave the practice of dentistry was certainly planted when I was a senior in school.
This friend of yours, what does he do?
He now, I actually don't know. I think he still teaches English. So his life took many, many turns as well. He now lives in China. He's married to a Chinese wife. And I think he still teaches English. He loves little kids. So he was working with little kids. I know he was really good at directing me towards the the next stage of my journey, but he never actually like became an entrepreneur himself.
Interesting. There are
But he
those.
did have a business. Like this was like before. So he's from the UK and he had a very successful business in the UK selling bikinis through the phone, over the phone. What do you call it? Magazine, you mail magazines out and get orders over the phone. He had a huge business doing that. And I think he sold it. And then he never actually got back into the business world, but he was very knowledgeable.
Interesting. Very cool. Love that. And then, you know, how did the idea for Owwlish stem? Was it just kind of like the next organic progression, I guess, like, you know, what's more scalable than this niche market? And was how much of that was motivated, I guess, by that faculty professor who then like ripped off your idea to then be like, okay, how do I expand the basket so it's not just like this very narrow niche?
A lot of it was motivated by the faculty and just that experience of almost having your business taken away at a very, very vulnerable time in my life. The timing could not have been crazier. I'm just like, seriously, I'm going to push this baby out any moment. And now I'm going to see this revenue dip. Like, this is the time that I need the most security, if anything. I can't handle a situation like this was really the thought. Now, we did not just start with Owwlish right away, though, at the beginning, because we weren't sure. By me, I mean my husband and I. My husband's a developer, and we were kind of toying around some things. And so we played with some WordPress plugins, and I guess that's the biggest thing. WordPress plugins, like he made and sold a plugin that's a little bit more elaborate for like WooCommerce automations. So that was fun while it lasted until we handed over ownership, but that was fun. And so we were dabbling this and that, and we really liked the idea of software in that you have more customers instead of clients, if that makes sense. Like you're not personally serving and you're doing, let's say, less one-on-one coaching, and you're having more people that are like purchasing this. I feel like SaaS clients are kind of in between customers and clients, but it's still a lot more hands-off after the people have been onboarded. It's a lot more hands-off versus in the other dental business, even though I was selling a lot of courses and stuff, and that was wonderful. It's like when they're seeking me out for a very specific purpose, and when the purpose is over, they don't need me anymore. It's like a goodbye. There's no recurring revenue there. Like they'll be like, say, a client of ours for like a year or two, and then when they get into school, it's like literally like I will never see them or hear about them again. So I really liked that idea. So I liked the SaaS model a lot better than WordPress plugin model because the revenue was recurring and it was brewing in us for a while. But yeah, it really came down to like, what do we know well and what could we really contribute to this current look of the online, layout. And yeah, when we were discussing from a lot of ideas we discussed, when we talked about this online course, an easy way to put an online course on their website, that felt the most right, because online courses are a huge part still of the other business that we still do run. We know that a lot. And we believe in them. They've changed our lives for sure. They can change others' lives. So yeah, that's how we landed there.
Got it. And how long ago was it that you guys, since you formally started Owwlish?
Probably started the development, I think a couple of years ago now.
Okay. Very cool.
We took a way too long to do the MVP kind of thing, or arguably, but yeah. We did develop a lot. We did do a lot of basement developing in the way you're not supposed to do when you're developing a software.
Sure.
Yeah.
Got it. And are you guys completely like self-funded, bootstrapped right now?
Yep.
Very cool. And currently, is it just you and your husband, or do you guys have additional team members or?
We have more people. We have a couple of full-time developers and one full-time assistant, and we get help here and there when we need, where we need, from this person and that person.
Got it. And how are you getting most of the business right now? Like, what's the current go-to-market motions look like?
SEO.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, SEO. Like, people really need, let's say they have like Webflow is really growing and there's no way to do this. Like, it's not like they have other options. They don't have other options. And so when they search, they just naturally land on us.
Wow. Okay. So everything is primarily inbound traffic right now?
Yeah.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah, I feel like your situation, typically, like if I was to replace the background from dentistry to like software engineer, the journey is somewhat similar in the sense that like they could always go back to being a software engineer at a large company, right? But like that's just the thing that they detest. They don't want to be a cog in the wheel. They want to be able to facilitate their own wheel. And especially in those situations, like they are, they have the ability to almost kind of like build anything that they want. And so it's trying to figure out what it is that they should build. So it almost seems like the stars are aligned from the partner that you have, the friend that you had, bringing these different kinds of like ideas into your mind. And then obviously your background of, I think maybe just inherently not succumbing to the status quo, right? Like seeking something more. And I think it goes back to along the lines of how you explained the idea of legacy. And when you talked about your kids and having them look at you as somebody who wanted the most out of life. And obviously I have my best friend who is a dentist, and I feel like soul crushing to him to have to go into a practice every day. He loves the outdoors. He loves surfing, and and that's just kind of like not feeding his soul in the same way that I think like something else could possibly be. But he's now wrapped into a family practice and the whole nine, so it's a lot more challenging for him to kind of like step away. But yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of this is a very interesting story. I mean, I think that there's a lot of different types of listeners out there, and those that come from varying backgrounds. Is there anything that you would advise or suggest, whether it's something that you've seen as like an inflection point in your life, or obviously you had this friend, but like that proposed ideas, but there's obviously a lot of people who run into that friend that proposes ideas, but they don't necessarily run with it in the same way that you did. What was, I guess, the, if you could put a finger on it, maybe like what differentiated you, I think maybe from somebody else who I'm sure that friend might have shared ideas with, but you ran with it. I mean, is there anything you could, and it maybe isn't something that's necessarily taught or learned, but even like looking just at your characteristics and personality traits, anything that you can think of that propelled you to run with it?
I believe big decisions can be made very quickly. When you hear something like a suggestion, perhaps, deep down in your gut whether you want that or not immediately. And then we spend a lot of time rationalizing it with our head, right? But for me, when I get that gut feeling, I decide kind of there and then that that's what I'm going to do. I don't spend time ruminating over big decisions. It's funny. I probably spend a lot more time ruminating over smaller decisions. It's not like I'm a really good decision maker. I'm not always, but those big life-changing decisions have always come to me really fast. I don't look back. Like, for instance, when I was in high school, so this was in Korea, I was in a brand new high school. We were the very, very first. And that gave a severe disadvantage in the fact that I wouldn't have any seniors, because in Korea, like the people are big. Like even after you graduate college or whatever, and you go to work, you would, let's say, lean on people from your university, but also people from your high school. And that, not having that, I did not like that idea whatsoever. And I was better than medium. I would say like about 15%, the top 15% of my class. Now, you can't go to dental school with your top 15%. I was trying to do better, but it just wasn't working, right? And I had this tutor that he wasn't just talking to me, he was talking to like a group of high schoolers, but he said, oh, like somebody I know, she quit high school so she could take the GRE, she can get a better GPA, and now the GPA won't be an impediment to her going to a good college, but also she doesn't have to waste time in high school doing things like art and PE when you can spend all the time studying. And I was just like, I made the decision to quit high school, and I did. It was just like, it was very fast. It just made sense to me. And so like, that was a huge decision I made on the spot. Coming to the US, leaving Korea was a big decision I made on the spot. Listening to the 4-Hour Workweek, like the decision to leave dentistry was a very, very fast decision. There was absolutely no like, but I spent $100,000 on my education. Like, it's like, no, it's sunk cost. Like 10 years down from now, I'm going to be happy that I took a chance. And it's not like it's gone. Like if I want to work again, or if I need to work again, I always can. Mm-hmm. And so I think, a disregard for sunk cost. I don't know where that one came from. I really never really regarded sunk cost as much, even though it was, I said 100 grand, didn't I? It was more like 150 grand. Complete disregard for sunk cost. And then just when my gut says so loudly, I'll just trust it. I just have a way of shutting out the other side. Because like, you can always argue for both sides. And when you're unable to take a side, when you're arguing for both sides, it's like you can't make a decision. But when my gut yells loudly at me, I can shut the other side down. And I'm like, no, this is what we're doing.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever like heard somebody describe it in that way before. And you're definitely like a unique guest in coming from more of the medical field and going through these independent journeys, not necessarily like going through, we've had somebody who went to medical school and then started a tech company with engineering friends and then went into venture capital or something like that, but like not necessarily, bootstrap the tech company on their own, right? And like it's definitely a lot more challenging, but also takes a lot more audacity to kind of like to do that. And I'm just curious, I'm more curious about the psychology of like where people like come from and how do they make these decisions, because there are so many people, like you're saying, that will sit and rationalize when they know what they feel in their gut and they quiet it down. They turn down that fire there. And I don't know what the difference. I wish we could figure out that I don't know if it's like a code in our DNA or whatever it is, or like some external factor as kids, but like something differentiates, I think, those that are able to quell the rationalization part and make the jump.
I guess maybe my mom has helped a bit here too, or maybe more than a bit. So my mom was a single mother, and she had 3 kids. And being a single mother in Korea is not an easy task. Like, you don't do that. But she's also never held a job. She's ran businesses. Now, I'm not going to say that they went very well because over time we did continue to downsize where we lived. But she has made it work. I saw her going from running a piano, kind of like because in Asia, you teach your kid piano. That's just what you do. So we had like a little place that she rented outside. It was like a piano academy. I don't know how you would say it in English, but something like that. And she would, employ other people to help her teach. So she ran that for years, and then she just got burnt out. And she ran something similar to like a Kumon. It's like I also don't know how to say it in English at all, but it's like kids' worksheets, like math worksheets and whatnot. And you deliver those, and you employ teachers to go teach those things. And she's done that, and she's run a restaurant. So I saw her, and I was next to her when she was going from, one venture to the next. And so maybe in my mind, it's like, just do it. It's not that big of a deal. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, what's the worst that can happen kind of deal?
Exactly. Like, then you change.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, when you talk about like the piano teaching and then similar to like a Kumon kind of deal. I mean, it seems like curriculum and education runs in your blood then to a certain degree, right? It's like, seems like a natural progression from you were put into this because you, I guess the test, some standard test told you, but like you were put into dentistry, but you ended up going to this idea of curriculum and education and teaching, and super interesting. Okay. Well, this has been a very engaging conversation. I think we're going to start wrapping things up, but I would love to kind of just ask one more question here, which is, you know, where do you imagine Owwlish to be in the next 5 years? Like, what are your personal goals? You know, where would you like to see it go? And also, do you feel like this is the business, the project that you feel like is going to be defining for you and something you commit to for the next like decade or plus to kind of like realize the full potential of what it can become?
Yes. To answer that second question first, the answer is yes. I feel like, I mean, the entrepreneurial journey I shared with you today, I left out all the little turns that I took, right? There were other failed ventures in the middle, and I threw a lot of spaghettis on the wall. And from all the things that I tried, Owwlish it kind of has my heart in a way the other projects did not. I'm the most engaged. I have the most passion for it. It's the most fun for me. So yes, at the time being, I don't foresee myself starting another. I actually kind of made a commitment to myself not to start another commitment. And just see Owwlish through. So Owwlish is the thing for me. Place I want it to be in 5 years is I want it to be on, kind of how Zapier has become just the tool that we use when we need to connect things in a no-code way. I want Owwlish to be a way where people put up courses on their site, especially if they are not a developer. If they don't have a developer, they don't want to work with a developer. The no-code tool, I want that to be Owwlish.
Very cool. On that note, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your journey and your story. Again, it was very interesting.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And if it is okay, I would love to offer your listeners 2 months Owwlish for free. And to get that, just come over to owwlish.com/podsass. That's Owwlish with 2 W's. So owwlish.com/podsass. And then, we would love to offer you 2 months of our paid plans for free.
Awesome. We'll do. And we'll be sure to add that to the description and all the different channels and the distribution for streaming too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on today, Chris.
Of course. Thank you.